How it
Oh
goes.
man. So
Well, hey man, it's great to meet you.
yeah, thank you.
I've been attending all of your I think I've attended all of your webinars.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
I've been following you that kind of through this AI journey you've been on. I'm not sure, maybe the last 6 months or so, and
Like a year and change, yeah.
year. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And
over there.
I don't know, man. I really enjoy all of your content. I really appreciate your perspective. I feel like every time I hear you speak in one of these webinars you host, I always find myself taking a lot of things away and having a
Oh,
lot of notes at
cool.
the end. So I thought it would be really fun to sit down for an hour. And I've recorded a few of these interviews now. I'm still in pretty it's a pretty early project, and just
Yeah.
it's been kind of a big experiment, but I feel like at the end of every call we kind of start mentioning AI and going into it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I figured it'd be really cool to kind of just sit down for an hour and kind of go deep and like really
Yeah, yeah.
talk through it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm game. I think about it more than probably I should.
yeah, yeah, no,
Quite a
and
bit.
I'm in a similar boat.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, maybe just to kind of like get to know you a little better. I'm curious just what your background is in general, maybe kind of where your journey began. I know you're a trained industrial designer,
hmm
but how did you kind of find yourself falling into that field?
Industrial design, yeah. Yeah, so I'm like a lifelong art creative guy. I kind of knew that was my thing since, since grade school. Like I already knew, that I was better than other kids at drawing. So, it's like kind of that positive reinforcement deal, right? So like I started getting, compliments for it, and so then I stuck to it. And then by the time I hit junior high, I was doing, like art competitions or things at the school. And then high school, I went on the art track, like 4 years of art, and and I'm the first person, excuse me. I'm the first in my family to go to college. So actually, my parents didn't, I think went to grade school, right? So they immigrated from Mexico. So college was not something that, there was any experience in my world. So when I was in this art track, the my art teacher ended up saying, "Hey, I think you can go to college. I think because I was winning competitions and things like these like local, not local, but regional shows and things like that." And so, like, yeah, nowadays fine art, right? Like, draw, pencil portraits and still lifes and
Sure.
pencil watercolor, colored pencil pastels and stuff like that. And then, and then he's the one that effectively, like this, or my art teacher was like, hey, this is the school you should go to. And then it was Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. And so I just look back now. I actually just had this conversation with my wife for the first time in like 20 years. I was like, if it was not for that, like I had no other choice. I had no other schools. Like that was the only school that I had even in my radar just because his art teacher said you should go here. And then he helped me put my portfolio together. Me and another guy that were both were on the same track. He was also really good. And so both of us actually ended up getting a scholarship. Both of us ended up going to the school, and then I didn't know, so I went for fine art effectively, and then or just because of my art skills, I didn't even know industrial design existed. This was back in 1997, and so when I got there, I did the foundations year, and then I started seeing, I was like, well, what should I do, right? And I kind of knew I didn't want to do fine arts. Like I knew I wanted to do creativity, but I didn't know. I knew that I needed to do something. I had that idea in my head of like starving artists. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like my parents are investing in this. It's a big deal. For our family. So it needs to be something that I can pay back. What they've invested. And and so then so I went to, they had fine arts, and then they had the commercial arts. Those were the two pillars. And then I started looking in the walls, and I started seeing drawings of on the like that I'm like, hey, I could draw, and these are products, and I like at the time I like stereo equipment, like car stereo.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, I like car stereo. I could do car stereo. Like I could do that. I could do head units and amplifiers and things like that. That's perfect. And that's literally what it was. I was like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, let me do this.
It's just
And
like
then
Kicker and
yeah,
what
yeah,
was it, like
yeah.
Westwood? It was
Yeah,
one, like
I
all
don't
that
even know how you pronounce
Crutchfield.
it. Yeah, yeah, Crutchfield. Yeah, I used to love that magazine, like Crutchfield. Like to this
Yep.
day, I like sometimes still I think about it. Like they would give you the installation guides and everything. Um, it was like actually a great user experience. Like those guys had it figured out like way back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's how it started. And then I had no idea what this path was. I just found out about the profession, back in those days. So there was 97 to 2001. I mean, there was, I think, like 12 of us, in our year. And then I don't know, 10 the year before. It was like pretty small, right?
Sure.
It wasn't a lot of people back then. And and so yeah, I mean, it was pretty, looking back, it was pretty wild because I didn't even have a computer up at that point. I had never had a computer like when I got to that grade. So it was like just from scratch, right? Everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And
That
then
was going to be my question
yeah,
actually. I'm trying to think like 97 to 2001. That was like computers have been around for a while, the internet, but I
mhm,
feel like that period is where everything like really started taking hold and getting a lot of momentum, and computers were actually falling more into like consumer hands as
yeah, yeah,
opposed to being these like $5,000 or $6,000
that's right.
workstations. Is
Yeah,
that
like
so? Were you taking like Photoshop and all of that when you were in school, or?
so eventually, right? Yeah, and part of it was because, again, my family circumstances, just there was nobody there was using computers. Another, I just hadn't been around. I hadn't had a need for it prior to this, and so eventually, obviously the school had computers, so that's that. My first email account was in college. Like I remember just like, oh my good, there's the internet.
Yeah.
What is this internet thing? And so people are using it, but for me it was new. And then yeah, then there I started using it. Eventually, I got a computer. At that point it was desktops, right? I got a desktop computer and installed programs on there and yeah, I mean that was back in the day where like Alias and those Alias studio the studio the Alias Studio you'd have to use it on those big old powerful
Yep.
computers. Nobody was running those on their own computers, so you would have to use it there at the school. Um, yeah, and then by the end of that, I ended up winning the merit award for my grade in my school, and ended up getting a job at a design. I then came back to Chicago, which is I'm from Illinois, so I grew up in Chicago, and then I went to high school outside of there, and then moved back to Chicago when I graduated, and then got a got a gig there at a design firm called Kaleidoscope. That was brand and product. They did branding, they did industrial design and production type of work. And that's it. Started my career there and worked along some super talented people. And that's kind of where I got my first taste of things outside of product design, right? Like the branding and the packaging and
Right.
that there was more to it than just, straight up industrial design. And then yeah, so that was phase one. And then phase two was I left that job to go out on my own and do consulting work. And so then I started working at a lot of design firms around Chicago and doing I mostly focused on my favorite things were just different hard good products, right? Like kitchen sinks and battery chargers and kids wagons and tricycles and things like that. And then structural packaging. Like I just really like structural packaging, bottles, and not not and I was never into like corrugate type of stuff, but just bottles. I really like bottles. And so I did that for a little bit, and during that same time, I started my own company. And so I partnered up with a cousin of mine, and I was the design creative brand side, and he was the business side, and we started a bicycle company and a direct to consumer bike company. And we did that. I ended up eventually running that company, and I did that for 15 years. That was
Oh
pretty
wow.
much my entire career. I would say the majority of my career has been running a hard goods sporting goods company. And so I kind of left the design industry for quite a while there. So I wasn't at I was still doing design work. I would still do consulting work on the side, like here and there, just maybe one project a year. But primarily it was like 95% bike business. And so doing everything, right? So at that point, that's where I started doing that is when it like kind of complete, there it was good and bad. I learned a ton and it was really helpful for me because I was doing everything. I ran the company, so I was handling yeah, hiring and finances and
Oh wow.
sales and marketing and everything, right? Customer service, warranty. And so it was really good, but it was also really draining, right? Because at the end of the day, that's not what it was one, it's not one, it was not my plan, right? Like, I guess I'll say, like, it sort of just happened. My plan was to build this company, and we built it and grew it, and it was really good, and I mean, a roller coaster, right? It was really hard. And but somewhere along the line, I just remember telling my wife, when this was probably 2019. I remember telling my wife, like, man, I never thought that what I'd be doing for a living is just handling a customer service team. Like that's just
Right.
not what, like, I didn't think I would be doing this. Like, literally dealing with this type of, like, that's it. That's what I do. And then here and there I'll go do design stuff. It's just, I don't know. I just don't like it. And then I was getting really burned out. Like, like, just mentally, just really tired of it. And that's why, like, I knew, I'm like, okay, I need to do something about this because this is not working. Like, I didn't want, like, this just sort of happened this way. Like, I wanted to be the product brand person at the company, and just the way things happened, ended up running the company, and it just, again, that's just not what I wanted. And so I kind of let that, it just sort of happened, just, little by little. It was no big plan. It just sort of, kind of fell in, gravity sort of took hold, and that's just what happened. And so then in 2019, I'm like, okay, I need to proactively fix this. I need, it can't be 10% of my life is creative work. It needs to be, 50% at least. I need more of this because I'm getting pretty tired of this. And so I actively started doing that. I actively started, okay, I need maybe some more consulting work, maybe like bring in somebody else at the company to handle that side. And so that's what I did. I ended up bringing some more people in there to help me with this. And then the pandemic hit, and,
Right.
and then and then it ultimately sort of made decisions for me, which was, I guess, a little bit easier that way. It sort of pushed me, based on circumstances and how messy it got, to basically, at that point, we scaled the business back quite a bit, to sort of weather the storm. And then in that time, I started doing more product consultancy work, and then ever since that, the bike business still hasn't recovered. The bike industry's still in a world of hurt. And so in that time, I started doing all these other things, helping other companies with their bikes, and then I found AI, and then now I'm doing this AI thing, kind of pretty much full time, like, building this new
Yeah.
business. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really interesting. So you've kind of been in this entrepreneurial world now for more or less your whole
mine.
career.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I have not worked. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I don't, like, I have only worked for myself, I guess you can say,
Yeah.
for since 2007. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know how to work with I would
Yeah.
probably make a bad employee. Like, I don't even know
Oh no, no,
how
I
that would
don't think
work at this
so.
point. I don't know. It would be pretty, you get so used to, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long. Like, it's kind of crazy because I did, like, think about it when, as I was trying to figure out what to do. I'm like, man, I should even apply to some places. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I should consider. I hadn't applied for a job in literally, like, 15 years. I'm like, maybe I should apply for, let me just see what's out there.
Yeah,
And then it didn't go well. I'm like, yeah, there's, I don't know, like, where do I fit? I don't know. My experience looks really weird. Like, I don't have this, like, nice trajectory. And I remember kind of beating myself up over it. I was like, man, this, like, I don't have that nice progression. I just have, like, here and then freelancing, and then bam, and nothing, like, and here's
yeah.
one thing I will say that's actually interesting in this point. I look back, and like, I mean, I'm not a guy that regrets things, but one of the things that I would tell a younger version of me, and people out there, it's interesting because when I built this business, we did so much work there. I mean, because, again, we were a, consumer facing, brand, and we retailed our products. So we did, bicycles, and all types of different bikes. We did apparel, accessories, showrooms, right? We had the whole deal, marketing campaigns, everything. And I didn't treat all those projects like design projects. I mean, meaning I did treat them like design projects when I was doing them, but in terms of documenting them, like, I didn't document any of it.
Ah,
I just
right.
like, we built an entire showroom, literally an entire showroom, furniture, the whole deal. Other than the pictures of the actual showroom, right, and just, like, videos of us working there, I didn't document the design process, right? Because my head wasn't thinking, I'm gonna need this for to do design work. I was like, I'm building a bike business. This is what it takes to do that.
Right.
And so then I kind of at the end of 15 years of doing that, I didn't have like, oh, what do I don't have any of this documentation. Like I just have pictures of what happened and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, including myself. And I, for my career, I've always worked in house. I mean, sometimes you're so your head's down and you're just focusing on getting the job done, and you're not necessarily thinking about like
Hmm.
that longevity or, oh, I'm gonna have to like explain this,
Yeah.
to somebody. So I think that that's something a lot of people
Yeah.
struggle with,
Yeah.
to a certain extent. But
And
yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
amazing.
take,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
it
sorry,
doesn't
go
take
ahead.
much work. And I was saying, it doesn't take a lot of extra effort to do it. I just,
Right.
again, I just think at that time, you're only looking at that, like I wasn't looking down the road. I was just looking at what I was doing right there and not really thinking about, okay, well, maybe this is valuable. I should probably be documenting what I'm doing because you just never know. But I was so fixated on this is literally what I do and what I'm going to do the rest of my career, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and obviously things took me different ways and it's awesome, like I like where I'm at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment. I have I've always been in house, but I have a lot of freelancers and entrepreneurs, I guess, small business owners in my
Yeah.
family, and I've seen the struggles and I've seen the
Yeah.
ups and downs, and I have all the respect in the world for anyone who starts their own business, regardless of industry or context
Yeah, 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 me
or
too.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I look at those folks. I'm like, man, like some of the most creative people I know are business owners, and not even design, just
yeah,
just restaurant guy, and like just people they get because so some of it is we as a whole. I think humans we're really good. We're really creative. I mean, it's the one thing that's one of again. I mean, we're jumping ahead, but it's one of the reasons that we really dovetail nicely with AI, right? Because we that creativity is what fuels it, and and sometimes it just takes to be put under a lot of very tough circumstances, situations to really get somebody to be super creative.
yeah.
Like those circumstances bring out the best of creativity, and that's so a lot of business folks I know, yeah, they have to figure their way out of some crazy situations, and they come up with like the most pretty impressive solutions.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's get into it. So I think probably the AI and kind of your postings and your journey and the way you sort of shared your learnings. I'm assuming that's um kind of currently where a lot of people are following you, and you're I feel like you've become like very known and over the course of this period. But I'm curious to ask, like, how did you get started with this journey with AI and Midjourney, and how did you kind of start going down this path? Because at least for myself, I'm coming much more from a place of I'm working in an organization, and I think for me, it's a little bit more of doing my due diligence to make sure that I'm still employable and I'm building the skills that I know I'll need in the future as I continue to work at various organizations. But it's interesting, you're sort of, because you're more entrepreneurial and you're more in control of your own destiny. I'm just curious, like, what led to that initial like desire to start
Yeah.
exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's oh yeah, I've thought about this a bit. So it is part of it is so there's I think two things. One is circumstances, right? And then the other is I think just the way that I've sort of been things I've been accustomed to, I guess, in my life. And so first, like on the accustomed side, like again, son of immigrants, right? So there was this mentality of like, hey, like just kind of do the work, like that. I
Right.
have that mentality in me, like that's just, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, like, it comes, there's a lot of downsides to it,
Yeah.
but
And you're
that is,
from the Midwest, right?
yeah, yeah. So there's this
Yeah, so
mentality,
it's like a double.
double whammy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I do have that mentality of like, listen, just don't complain, like just that's what I saw growing, it's like don't complain. We're lucky we're here, just do it. And so that mentality, when AI came out, it was like, and so I would say that was phase one of that. Then when I ran the business, I got another dose of that, right? Because it was like business was crazy, right? Like there was, things that were
Right.
in our control, things that were completely out of our control that really hit us pretty hard. And you eventually get used to like that is it's not even unlucky. That is just business. Like that's just life. That just happens. And you just kind of have to just get through it. And so and there's nobody to go and complain to. It's like, yep, I mean, either you're gonna stay in business or you're not, so figure it out. And so I think though that all that that experience that I built up in that world, I think conditioned me to be able to sort of say, hey, I know I've been sketching and drawing and owe my entire career to these abilities I have. And now these tools are coming out that do all these things that I've done. And I was able to more quickly just say, well, I mean, okay, it's kind of unlucky, I suppose, but I mean, what am I gonna do about it? I got to figure this out. So that was one part of it, probably the biggest part of it. The other part was just circumstances. I just happened to be at a time where I was trying to figure out my next move, right? Because of the bike. Like if this had happened 3 years ago, no chance I would have done this because I would have been knee deep. When I was running the business, that's all I can think of. Like 60 plus hours a week. Like that's all I did. And I just happened out for the first time in like my entire career, just kind of be sitting there, being like, like, what
Right.
do I do? I mean, I was doing consulting work, but then projects would be done, and I'm like, okay, well, what now? And so then, and that's literally so part of it's just pure dumb luck. It just like I just happened to have a lot of free time and have a lot of experience. So I was just a very experienced person with a lot of free time, and I was like, okay, well, these tools are kind of scary. Let me this was like Q4 of last 2022, right? And
Okay.
and so like fall of 2022.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, like let me look at these tools and let me just see, like, I mean, there's a little bit of a professional existential threat here. Let me look into it. And then that was one part. And then the other part, I'm like, and also like if we want to rebuild this bike company, we don't have our resources anymore. We lost that during the pandemic. So maybe I could use these tools to help us build back up. So it's kind of both. And so everything I did at the beginning was with the bike lens. I was just trying to figure out how I could use these tools for that. And literally, actually, most of 2022 when I used it was all bike stuff. I was just trying to see. I didn't even do like other product design stuff. It was just mostly that, like apparel and marketing things and bike product stuff. And so then I would say that phase was just starting and stopping, right? I would start playing around with it, and like everybody else, I was like, I don't know, this isn't really working, or maybe it is, or I could do things faster over here. It was like the same process that most everybody goes through. And then I would say by 20, sort of at the end of that year into 2023, right at the beginning, I started just because I was into bikes, I rode a lot of bikes, and so I was into like challenges. Like I just that's a big thing in bikes.
Ah,
All these
okay.
like riding challenges and how many miles did you ride in a
Yeah.
year and that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, like I'm gonna do an AI challenge. I'm just gonna do AI every day for 30 days because I had done for myself sketching stuff like that. I had done this footwear sketch challenge for myself where I sketched every day like watercolor and pen and whatever for like 30 days or 40 days. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that, but with AI. So let me try that. And so, and I started posting. And so then to hold myself accountable, I was like, okay, I'm going to post online,
Yep.
right? I'm just going to post on Instagram. And so I started doing that. That then led to another 30 days and then led to another, because then I started getting kind of addicted to it. I'm like, oh, this is like insane. And that's when I started seeing it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this
Yeah,
is
I
like
know what you
next
mean.
level.
Yep.
And and then I started posting on, I had like I had a LinkedIn account obviously since a long time ago, but it was non I just didn't use it. Like I didn't even know there was followers. Like that's how completely unaware I was of other than just going in there and accepting requests here and there and like posting if we were looking to hire somebody just
Right.
throughout the years. But I never used it. And so I was like, oh, well, let me just start posting here, I guess, because I need to rebuild my network. That was actually the one of
Oh, right.
it was because one, I want to hold myself accountable. Two, I need to rebuild a network because I kind of let it sort of die out because I was busy over here doing all these other things. So let me just start posting to see what happens. And that's how it started. And then I just started posting every day. And I mean, nobody was really watching at the beginning, and then it just kind of kept growing from there. And again, I had e-commerce experience, right, from from the bike
Oh
company. So
yeah.
I had
Yeah.
business experience, so I knew how to run a business. So I knew it started off literally that's how it started. There was no big master plan. It was just just gonna start down this path and I'm gonna learn these tools and then I'm gonna just do things I enjoy, footwear and fashion and product and whatever. And then at some point I'm like, okay, well, I'm getting attention. Maybe I should start. I know in my bike world, I need to get emails, like that's usually a good idea to get emails that way, that way you can communicate with people. So I'm like, let me start a newsletter and like, and let me just document what I'm doing. And I'll just take whatever I'm posting on LinkedIn and just compile it and do some deeper thinking. And
Yeah.
again, it'll force me to just keep thinking about this topic.
Which
And
not to
yeah,
interrupt you, but I love
yeah,
your
yeah, go for it.
newsletter, by the way. It's
Oh,
it's really well like structured. I feel like I don't know what frequency you're sending them out at, but
every
I feel
week.
like
Yeah,
yeah, what weekly. Okay. I feel like
weekly.
that's
Yeah,
like the right pace and it's always
yeah.
like the right length and it's easy to read through and it's like well summarized. If anyone's
Oh,
listening
thank
to
you.
this and isn't subscribed to your newsletter, I highly recommend
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I highly
Thank you.
recommend that people do that. Um but it's really refreshing to hear that story because
Yeah,
it's interesting. I've had similar experiences where anytime I've really bitten off one of those challenges, like a 30-day challenge or a little
yeah,
2-week challenge or something where I like am really forcing myself to sit down every night and make something, whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
I feel like that's where I've noticed like the most skill progression
yeah.
for myself as like as an industrial designer.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I talk about it like they tell you I play a little bit of a guitar, but not as good as I'd like, but I remember I knew this guy back at my design consulting firm days in Chicago, and I remember he was really good, and he would tell me like the name of the game is just to pick up the guitar every day, like
yeah,
just even just for a little bit, like even if it's 5 minutes. And so I remembered that, and I didn't do that. If I would have done that, I would have been, way more awesome today with guitar. But I do it in other things, right? And I did it with AI, and I've done it with design, right, as well as sketching. And but with AI, what I realized with it, it's interesting, right? Because it is well, exactly what you mentioned, how you make a lot of progress, like a lot of gains are made during these types of daily challenges that impact that sort of beneficial impact is it feels to me is amplified with AI
yeah,
because there's not so much because of the output, like it's not just like, hey, look at what you can do and you can do things faster. Yeah, for me it's part of the thing that there's an interesting thing going on that I'm sort of spotting with these tools, and it is that they're they're effectively breaking try to figure out how to say this in the right way, but they're effectively breaking like the paradigm of how we have done visualization for like
right.
the longest time. And it's a very interesting dynamic of what's going on. And I could talk about it more, but the idea is that 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 complete sort of reshuffling of like the way we approach things that these tools are sort of here perfect little case study or a perfect little example is we we do low fidelity visualization, right? Like that is a tool that we use, all the time. It's like our go-to. And there's a reason we do low fidelity visualization. It's because it's the fastest way, right? It's super fast. It's really cost effective, right? And it doesn't require that high of skills, right? There has those attributes that make it so
Hmm.
that it becomes a really effective communication tool, right? It's why we use it all the time. There's actually more to it than that too. There's permissions that are associated to it, right? Like the permission that the receiver or the other person that's like looking at your work has to come in there and revise it, right? Like that iterative process that it allows. And so there's all these dynamics that happen because of these attributes of low fidelity sort of work. And then on the flip side, you have high fidelity visualization, right? That's completely different, right? High fidelity visualization takes a lot of skill, takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, right, to do. So hence it's basically reserved for certain tasks. And then obviously you have everything in between. And so we're used to that world. Like that is how we operate. That is how we've operated for a long time. And so it's pretty fixed, right? That's how we see things, pretty black and white. And then, but then now you introduce a new tool, and now these tools, all like this Kriya tool I've been using lately, or Midjourney, or all these
Yep.
other tools, all of a sudden you could put in a low fidelity effort and investment of time, and then get mid to high end fidelity. Like that has never happened before in the history, as far as I know, in the history of mankind. And so it is like throwing us off. Like we have a very hard time wrapping our head around that. That the fact that we can now
Yeah.
do low fidelity, like it's just reshuffling all these different attributes that were pretty fixed forever. And so therefore we just we either we psychologically just don't want to accept it, or we just struggle with trying to figure out what this means, right? That's kind of, and I'm speaking about myself. Like this is kind of what's happened with me. And but I think it just is, it's pretty widespread. And so, and I say all that, that was a big old roundabout way to get back to that. When you use tools every day like this, it helps to then sort of break down those walls. Right? Like that is how every week that I use
Oh.
these tools, I start
Hmm.
seeing things. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like what, I never thought about this, but what if I use this tool? You know, like even today I was thinking about, I'm like, I'm gonna put in a CAD model into Kriya, because you can
Yep.
do a screencast and then change the CAD model and then do
Yep.
visualization. You're like,
Yeah.
but
I was just doing that the other day.
yeah,
It's
like,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, and then you start thinking about it the other way. Like, oh, and what if I do, what if I take, like I posted that stuff the other day. What if I take a mid-journey thing and bring it back in and then play around with, use it for color studies? Those
Yep.
things don't happen again because we've never done any of this, right? So our brain, we're actually, it's almost like you're almost like discovering, you're exploring, we're discovering new things. And the only way to discover new things is by walking down the path. And so putting that time in is the only way that this is going to happen. And then these challenges are really, a really good way to do it. So that's what I recommend to a lot of people. I'm like, look, it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just more just about that consistent 10 minutes a day,
Yeah.
like especially with these tools, actually, you don't need a lot of time. Like you can just put in a
That's the
little bit.
beauty of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you were to take on like a sketching challenge, like depending on whatever like the challenges that
Hmm.
you're giving yourself, like chances are it's going to require you to sit down, at least a couple hours each
Yep,
night. But the thing with AI is you really don't even need to sink
yep,
that much of a time investment to at least get some learning out of it or have something
yep,
you can show at the end.
yep,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Even as you were speaking earlier, I was kind of looking around for a pen and paper just because you were like triggering small ideas for
yep.
things to try. I feel like that's the thing that I found myself really latching onto with all of these AI tools is I just feel it's like the most inspired I've ever felt to really just try a lot of things. And part of it is because that time investment is kind of low and
Hmm.
you can really like
Yep.
just experiment and just try weird things and all of a sudden like these workflows start to emerge and it's kind of this weird process of you're just stitching lots of little learnings together. Um and
That's
it's
a really
exciting.
good,
It's
yeah,
like it's not really something that's ever been has that's been defined before. It's not like you can go pick up a book on
yeah,
10 AI workflows to
right,
add
right,
to,
yeah.
da 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 da. I mean, I know you have your class now, but
But
I don't
that's
know.
just
It just
starting to emerge. Yeah, that's just
yeah,
starting to, but you brought up a super valid point, one that I've thought quite a bit about. And it is that I think that to me is like the one of the most exciting, if not probably maybe the most exciting, but it's up there for me. And it's this idea that, again, because when I ran my business, it was, resource, we were, obviously we were the small company against these big giants, and so we had a lot of ideas, but at the end of the day, you only have so many resources, and when you're running the team, you are very well aware of those resources, right? And you have to, play within those boundaries and get super creative to try to battle these big guys. And then I see too, and so a lot, yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of the reasons that things are not explored, not because they're not good ideas, we just don't explore them because, again, financially they don't make sense. Like it makes
right.
no, Apple could sit there and explore 500 corner treatments. Like they could do that because financially they're going to sell enough product to make that pencil out. Nobody in the bike industry could do that, because there's just not enough bikes sell, right? There's just, the market just isn't big enough. And so we don't get to do that. And that's the case for many fields, right? As you know, like there's just not enough, it doesn't make financial sense. But then all of a sudden you have these tools where you're like, oh man, well, this idea is kind of crazy, and in a normal situation, I would not invest time and money into this. But in this case, it's not going to take me a lot of time. I can just kind of sort of go down this path and see if there's any little nugget of gold in there, and I'll invest, whatever, 15 minutes or 10 minutes and then see it through. And if it doesn't, I can just jump off of it and go back to something else. Like that was never possible, right? Before. And I think once you start thinking about it that way, it becomes yeah, to me it's like extremely exciting because then I just see like I just think of like how many great ideas have just never how many great ideas and thoughts and designs have just ended like stayed here, right? Because and we are professional visualizers, but they're guaranteed, we're not the only creative people out there. There's plenty of creative, super smart people out there. They just didn't have that ability to get it out, right? Like how many people out there have awesome songs in their head that they just don't know how to play the guitar, so they can't get it out. Like there's so much of that is about to happen where good and bad, right? Like you're gonna see a lot of really awesome things that were just stuck in people's heads, and now we're gonna make it out to the world, and a lot of a lot of not so good stuff that's also gonna make it out to the world. And so, but you know, in my world, I'm like, listen, I'd rather take the good and get all that new good stuff, and we'll curate our way and sort of filter our way through the nonsense, and I find it just fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, it's funny. That leads me to like a question that I've been mulling around. You mentioned that the time investment is relatively minimal to like explore a lot of these tools. But one of the things that I'm personally struggling with, maybe just a little bit of background. I've been leading kind of this like AI push internally
Mm.
within my own company, and so it's kind of started to at first it was for fun. It was similar to you, right? It's like, oh, let me just play around. And then I'm kind of showing somebody, hey, check this out. This is really interesting. And now it's kind of morphed into this responsibility that's landed in my role. Um, but one thing I find that I'm really struggling with is just keeping up with the pace of how
Yeah.
fast these tools are evolving and how many of these tools are popping up. And then there's kind of a process of like I'm sure you're dealing with this as well since you're kind of taking on this educator role. You're trying to keep up with that, learn it, compile some sort of perspective on it, and then relay that perspective to other people. I guess my question is just how do you find the time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
really keep that pace?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that is actually, I actually posted about this the other day because a good friend of mine, industrial designer also, that I've taught and sh shown him, gone through the classes with him, and he sent me a note about like, yeah, it's I'm guessing this isn't doing I'm guessing all these tools and all these things happening are probably doing a disservice to adoption, right? Like where people
Right.
are sort of freezing. And I'm like, yeah, no, that is a very valid point. And so there's no easy, answer, I guess I'll say, because it is unprecedented almost. Like I've never experienced anything like this where it's so relentless, right? Like it is
Right.
literally relentless. Like it is nonstop, and every company is just nonstop progress. And I'm assuming it'll only sort of, like that curve or whatever, it'll only just sort of keep getting faster. And then also just companies popping up left and right, trying
Right.
trying to sort of get in on this and figure out their tools. And so what I found, what's working for me is probably unique in that I'm sort of put myself in a position where I have a lot of people reaching out to me. So I one is I'm people are reaching out to me. Two is I'm talking to a lot of people like this
Yeah.
about this topic. So therefore I find out about tools, even clients that are like, hey, we want you to help us with XYZ. Have you heard of this tool? Because this,
Ah,
whatever. And so
right.
there's a lot of that's going on that puts tools in front of me, and so then so I get sort of a that exposure because of that, right? So I'm not out there really searching; they're sort of coming to me. But that's just like that's I would say the sort of the base level. The actual real sort of I guess answer to this is I try to my philosophy so far from what I have seen thus far, I try to simplify it in my mind. I try to break it down
Yeah.
to manageable. Like I try to like humans do, right? I try to simplify it into these manageable little modules, that I then sort of put things in, like these little buckets. And so as an example, this is how I view tools right now. I view it as, even though there's so many and it's all over the place, at the end of the day, for me, they effectively fall into three categories. They're they're either, and this is just in the world of design, right? Like specifically product design, but brand, that just different disciplines of design. They either fall in production, like what I call like AI production tools, like Newark and Viscom, like those type of tools, right? Where and so where this is the way I picture it. I picture it as that's the equivalent of me saying, hey, here's my concept. Like I'm the design director, but here it is. I actually sketched it out. You just go ahead and render it for me, right? So
Right.
it's a production thing. Then there are like what I'm kind of sort of calling like the imagination tools. Like this would be the Mid Journeys and the Dollies of the world, and Stable Diffusion has that part of it as well. And and those are different. Those are, I'm the design director and I'm saying, hey, this is the vision I have, and you go ahead and go to town, and then just bring me concepts back, and I will review it, give you feedback, and then you go out again, and then come back to me again. Like that's very different than the other one where I already had the idea and I just handed it over.
Right.
So these guys, in this case, this team is helping me come up with ideas. And then the third kind of newer thing I'm seeing now is really interesting, and that is the Kriyas of the world, right? Like
Yep.
this real time thing, and because
Yep.
those are different. That is actually like saying that's kind of like a cyborg, right? Where you're saying, hey, here I am, the design director, designer, and then here's the machine, and we're literally going to work in tandem, like at the same
Yeah.
time. And I'm going to say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Let's try this idea. Let's go here, and then we're just move, and then I see their idea, and they see mine, and we're just moving together. Like it's a very different
Oh
dynamic.
yeah.
And so those are the three sort of buckets so far, and I'm not saying that's the only ones, but as of right now, that's my lay of the land. And so I just put tools in each category. And so if I see a new tool come in and I say, okay, well, Viscom is very similar to Newark, or Creo is very similar to whatever, Stable Diffusion's version of what it does. And I just say, okay, well, I can't, like I'll play around with it and see if it's
Right.
good or not. And then but effectively I can't, there's impossible to focus on all of them. So I basically pick my horse, right? That I'm like the one I'm gonna bet on. And I tend to do it based on a couple things, right? Like I tend to do it based on just, well, number one is I put everything through my filters, right? Like so I have my needs as a product designer and a business owner. So I always look at it from both lens. Like it's not just product. I always look at it from product and business. And I say, okay, like, is it gonna do, like, perfect example is Mid Journey versus Stable Diffusion. Like Mid Journey is, Stable Diffusion arguably can do much more damage than Mid Journey, right? Like I think it's kind of a known thing. It has way more potential. Like you so much more control. I'm also that's the design filter side, right? So if you were just
Right.
gauging it on design, you would say, yeah, oh yeah, Stable Diffusion all day long, and then Mid Journey is like second to that. But if you look at it from a business perspective, I'm telling you right now, I've taught, however many people, 99% of those people would never even give Stable Diffusion a shot. Like I'm telling
Yeah.
you right, they just would never. It would be the equivalent that we were talking about earlier, like picking up the guitar every day.
Right.
But to go pick up the guitar, you actually have to go and grab all the pieces, put it together, string it up, like just to
You have to
play for
chop
five
the tree
minutes.
down.
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
to chop the tree down, carve it out. Yeah, like you're just not gonna, like, nobody's gonna, like, people will do that, but not the majority of people, right? And adoption's already hard enough, so throw all those extra hurdles on top of it. From a business perspective, it just doesn't make sense to me, right? And hence it's just, again, obviously there's gonna be power users. I'm toying around with it. It's gonna have its home, especially with like CAD users that already do that with CAD, and they're gonna just do
Right.
this with Stable Diffusion. But my point is that I approach tools from those filters, and that's how I pick the tools that I'm gonna use. And then the last part of it is I have like my North Star. Like I know what is my goal, like what is my intention with these tools. And like perfect example of this one. This is actually like a really big one that I'm focused on lately. I was talking to this company. They do a production type of tool, right? Like a production AI tool. And I was talking to them about the roadmap, right? And they were telling me that they're really focused on their big focus for this year is to make this tool have uh, even higher fidelity, effectively, like more photorealistic, right? Like just how Midjourney just came out with version 6, and the
Yep.
biggest thing was just more photorealistic, which is fantastic, right? For certain use cases. Like for my use case, I'm like, this is, and I remember talking to this guy, and I was, uh, it, if you can get me more photorealism, but you could also get me the things I need, which is not more photorealism. I need more control. Like that's literally what I need. I just need more tools. I need more
Yeah.
things to be able to do things. I'll take the photorealism if you give it to me, if it doesn't impact me not getting, if it doesn't mean I'm not going to get these tools. But in this case, that's not what's happening. These companies are so focused on photorealism that they're literally not even working on the control tools, right? And so we're almost in this like huge chase towards photorealism that's just happened because I think
Interesting.
the masses are into that. When if you think about it, you and I, like, I don't need a footwear visual to look hyper I'm cool with 85%, or 90%, right? Like I don't need
Yeah.
like why do I need more? I understand photography, I understand other, disciplines, but for design, what am I going to do with that hyper realistic footwear visual? Like I'm not going to put it on the website
Man.
to sell it, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a real shame too. And it brings up all these thoughts, and it could be such an interesting rabbit hole, but like, they say, what is it? The negative voice screams the loudest. I feel like that's the big critique everyone likes to immediately jump to is, oh, look at the hands, or look at this that's wrong, or that's wrong. And
yeah.
they kind of miss that deeper value of where it's contributing to the process, or like just being able to recognize that, like, hey, what this thing spits out doesn't necessarily need to be like the end state. It can
Yeah.
be a stopgap.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it is those companies are just getting caught up in
I think they are. Yeah.
that uproar, and they're kind of missing the forest for the trees a little bit. But
I
it's
think they are.
such an
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
perspective. I'm really excited to see when Midjourney goes to jumps makes that jump from Discord onto their own platform. I'm
Yeah.
wondering
Yeah.
if they'll start to address a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get on there now if you have to have like 10,000 or more generations. Like
Oh,
I'm in
okay.
there, and so
Yeah.
they have it, in their new. Uh, but again, I understand too that I'm not sure how much design is part of their customer
Right.
base, right? That I understand that, and
They're
so
touching just so many
yeah, they're
disciplines.
touching so
Yeah.
many, and because I see it, I see people just going wild online, and they have a lot of hobbyists that are just paying money just for fun, right? And
Right.
creating these ridiculous images and all these different things, and which is awesome, right? Again, the ideas weren't coming out, and so now they are, so that's a good thing. But again, for people like, so literally my entire course, all the training I've made is me effectively having to figure out how to work around and create my own systems and processes and tools because there's none there, right? And then they keep adding new things. So I'm like, okay, good. Now I can use that,
Right.
and I can do that. So for me, the biggest, I would say, again, I look at it from a product design and a business filter. But even on the product design, and I guess the shared sort of connection between those two, it is control. Like if I that's one of the big things I look for is like what tool is going to give me the most control, right? Like for example, like if I go to the Dolly, right, like and I'm using that one, it's not giving me the control I need. Like it may do awesome visuals, like Facebook even has a like a little Gen AI thing. Comes up with cool visuals, but there's no control. Like I don't have tools that I can go in there. And so for any of us that are professional designers, without control, it's pretty useless. It's just a pretty picture generator. And so that's what I do. I look around at all these tools and I pick the ones that I think that have shown me that they have sort of have a pattern of giving me control and being focused on that, right? And then updating it. And so Midjourney for me has been my number one. But then this Kriya thing is now all of a sudden just
Oh,
crushing
yeah.
it, and tools like that. This Newark thing has been my go-to for and Viscom as well. I've played around with for the production, and then Chat GPT for other things. And I'm sure I'm missing some, but Uh, but yeah, there's so many of them. But yeah, at the end of the day, how do you? I, what I do is I just follow. I try to stay away from the. I was telling somebody else. I was telling this to somebody else, or maybe online. I don't even remember. But I was telling people that I try to eliminate all like I don't look at this, and I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but but I'm not I don't look at this person that has 50,000 or 100,000 followers that is like AI for marketing. Like that's not my, that serves a purpose for that world. Like that's not my world, right? And so that doesn't really I'll pay attention just to see if there's any little thing I can, bring in over here, but I'm looking at this person that I follow that is like a hardcore professional architect that started using AI. And this guy over here that's a hardcore photographer that started using AI. And then this user experience guy that started using AI. Like I'm looking at that's what those are my signals, right? I'm looking
Mm.
for the people that were really good at what they did before AI, and now they've embraced AI and they're looking at it in I think a very open-minded way, and those are the people I pay attention to, and that's where that's where I pick up. That's how I avoid the noise, right? Like, and that's what that's my recommendation to people is just find the people that, and thankfully I think this year you're going to see a ton of that. You're going to start seeing a lot of us designers sort of come out of the woodwork and start
Yeah.
actually showcasing what we've been doing, now that we're actually embracing them. And so I think this year will be the year of the use cases. We're actually going to see it, and that so then it's just really going to, I think, elevate because people will be able to see themselves in it and say, okay, I see what's happening. I see now that we can pull that off. So it
Yeah,
should be.
I agree. And you one of the first things you kind of said when we started talking was when you were starting that journey, you kind of had that moment of like, "Oh, okay, it works, but it doesn't.
Mhm.
I don't know." And I feel like everybody has that everybody starts there.
Yeah, yeah,
And people kind of move on from that stage at different paces. And I feel like uh for people wondering, we're recording this January 2024, which will
yeah,
date this for better or worse. But
yeah,
I feel like I'm starting to really start to see a lot of those people, more and more people coming around and trying and becoming more open-minded. So everyone is kind of moving at their own pace. But yeah,
yeah,
I completely agree. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more momentum and a lot more people embracing things
yeah.
and trying something
Which I
different.
yeah, which I find it. I mean, part of the reason I'm so committed to this, right? Like the reason I'm able to, because again, I did this bike business for a long time. I was super committed to that, but there came a point where I was like, I don't even want to go to work, it was I was like, I'm just gonna call it in, like, hey guys, I'm not sure, you guys do
Yeah.
your thing, I'll be here. And so because I was I don't know if yeah, at some point I kind of started losing the passion for it. Um, and but when I'm doing this, what I'm doing now, like this has been my entire life. My entire life has been creativity. Like it's been fueled by that. Like they literally gave me this opportunity. Like this is where I'm at today in life. Like it really, carried me. And so then I look at, you know, just what's going on now, and I see, I'm like, man, this AI sort of split, in sort of society or whatever you want to call it, but this sort of shift that's happening, like I view it as sort of like a split, and once it starts like splitting, like this, you're going to be on one side or the other, and I would hate to see this field that we're in, and this, these things that we do for a living get effectively devalued because of AI, because I think there's a potential that could happen, right? I actually think it's completely wrong. And actually, my actual belief is that it's actually the polar opposite. My actual belief is that these tools, from my experience and even for stuff I've read and things people I've talked to, so it's not just me, but there's this idea that creatives are actually going to be even more valuable, because that is what these tools truly need to run. I mean, as evidenced by what we're
Oh
talking,
yeah.
it's figuring out workflows. Like this is just technology. We got to figure out how to. It's like the internet. The internet came out, and then very creative people turned it into, started building and started creating different tools, like the Airbnbs and Ubers and all these Googles and Facebooks and all these things. Like creativity made that happen, right? And so that's sort of what's going to happen here, except if unless we just sit there as designers and say, no, you know what, we're not going to do this. And then and that's my worry. My worry, and actually one of the reasons I'm doing all this and going down this path and just really trying to push this narrative is because I think it's there for us for the taking. I truly believe it. I think it's there for
Yeah.
the taking. And I think the only mistake we can make is just assume that like no, like try to protect our space and say no, we're not going to do that, and we don't need it. And the way we used to do it before is better. You know, that kind of thinking, which I understand. I understand. I completely understand the rationale. And look, do I wish that it comes back to the beginning of this conversation. It is what it is. Like this is just what's
Yeah.
happening, right? Like there's nothing we're gonna do. People will say stuff sometimes when I post, like, "Well, you doing this is what's creating." I'm like, there's nothing I'm doing that's gonna, at this point, like, yeah, this is actually the challenge. The challenge is this, in my opinion. The Me as a designer, I need manufacturing to help me make my bikes, right? I need marketing to help me tell the story. I need sales to help me sell my product. Like if I have AI tools, I'm going to try to make my life easy. But at the end of the day, AI in no time soon is going to be making bikes for me, right? Like I'm still going to need manufacturing. The inverse is actually not fully true. Like manufacturing will try to use AI to cut out design. You know, like other professions out there will try to use AI to
Yeah.
not on purpose, and not because they don't like us, you know, just because they're just trying to make their life easier. And if this AI tool I see it all the time. I see marketing folks saying, you know, oh yeah, you know, this tool just ended graphic design, you know, or this tool just, you know, it will end the, you know, web design or whatever, right? Like different, like but it's always like design, right? And why? It's because there's this idea that, as you know, probably pretty well, that everybody thinks they're a designer. Everybody thinks that to some extent that they could design, right? Like I know I'm not a lawyer, you know, I'm pretty clear. Like
Right.
I don't do legal, yet everybody thinks they can design quite, you know, and they can. Everybody can be creative and design, but not everybody can design well. And then these AI tools will make people think that they can, and then therefore they will. There is a potential that they will devalue what we do if we allow it to happen, right? So yeah, my mission at this point, my goal is just how do I continue telling the story, and then hopefully other people, and then other folks that are doing it as well, like my friend Greg that's doing it in UX. He'd be a great guy to talk to, by the way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like Greg Aper, yeah, I've known him for 20 plus years. He's doing what I'm doing in UX UI world, and he's also a former
Interesting.
industrial
Yeah.
design
Yeah.
guy. And so, but people like that are trying to really, I think I don't know, in my opinion, it's just it's the right it is we just have a really good opportunity right now, I think. And if we do it right, we'll I think design will be in a good spot. And if we
Yeah.
don't do it right, then it'll be in a not good spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And it's I'm finding that it's really by asserting kind of trying to I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to say this in a way that isn't doesn't sound bad. But I feel like the more I try to solidify myself as like in being an expert of these tools, the more it's like increasing my value and like what I'm able to contribute. And as long as I'm able to kind of word that in the right way and explain that, I feel like that kind of helps keep things in line a little bit. I can't remember if excuse me, if I saw you saying this or if I saw someone else saying this, but I saw a quote. It was something along the lines of the designer without AI will be replaced by the designer with AI.
Yeah, it's
Um,
probably somebody else,
and
but
seeing that and
yeah,
that
yeah, but
I
that's
really liked that
yeah,
summary. And I thought that that was a pretty good kind of prediction of where things are going. I guess just to wrap up here, like
yeah.
what are your thoughts on just where is all of this going? Like, where do you see us in the next 1, 2, 3 years? I mean, if you had told me 1 year ago that things would be where they are now, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I know it's impossible to predict, but just to like
Yeah,
have
yeah.
fun and imagine things, like
Yeah, yeah.
what do you think?
No, I think it's going to I th like so things I don't do anymore. Like I never say I don't say never, you know, when it comes to any of these, like that will never happen. You know, oh, like AI will never do CAD. AI will never
Right.
do, you know, like engineering. Like no, AI is very likely will do all of that, right? And it makes total sense. If you can right now do custom GPTs that effectively replicate me and talk to if I wanted to. Like I do all my posts, but if I wanted to, I could sit there and make my own little Hector GPT that thinks like me, like has my life history, all these things, right? Like you'll be able to do that with engineering work. You'll be able to do that with all these different things, right? Like you'll be able to, you know, making parts that are, that are designed for manufacturing and taking all those things. You just tell it what you wanted it to consider. Like I want to consider this type of manufacturing process and this type of molding. Like all that is actually pretty. Once they crack that, it's not, it's knowledge you're feeding it, and so that will all happen. You will still need the, again, like I've said, like you still need the guidance, you still need the vision, like you still need the creativity, you still need all the human on human sort of like the ability we have to be empathetic towards humans and understand what they need and then try to resolve their pain points. You'll still need all that. So in my opinion, it's I don't even think we can comprehend. Again, based on what we talked about earlier, I don't think we could even comprehend how this is going to change yet. So, but I do have a strong feeling that what will for quite a while still be needed is all the things that we creatives, we designers are really good at. And so again, the just our curiosity and our creativity and our intuition for these things and again our empathy for other humans, all of that, our listening abilities, all those things are going to be hyper critical. And so I think focusing on those things is going to be, you know, super important. And I think that and I think I think the only way we can have these, the only way we even have a shot to sort of have a pretty strong place in this future with AI and design is by walking down this path. I think we have to look,
Yeah.
we can't rely on somebody else to be learning AI and then tell us what to do with it. Like that's not going to work out well. Like we need to be the ones
Yeah.
getting in there. Like we're the most equipped to do it. Like we can get in there, we can learn it, we can we can stay on top of it as a community and then I think we'll do well. But yeah, but I think it's going to be, I don't even think we can understand. It's
Yeah.
gonna,
Yeah.
it's to me, but what I could understand though is that I think it's just going to be, I'll just speak for myself. This last year, and you touched on it yourself, this last year easily, not even a shadow, like 100% has been the most creative year in my entire career. A
Oh
hundred
yeah.
percent.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like 100%. And I had I had a guy comment on one of my posts like, "Oh, so you ran out of ideas." Like that's what his comment was. He's like,
Huh.
"Oh, so you're out of ideas. That's why you're using these tools." I'm like, "Oh no, trust me.
Oh no.
I have a lot of ideas."
Yeah.
And so as a matter of fact, I have more ideas. Like that's what's happening, right? That's what these tools do. Like they just take like they allow me to see, I call it like connecting the dots, right? Like they create these new dots that I just had never seen, and then I use my experience to connect to them, right? And say, oh, you know what? Wow, I had never considered that form, but guess what? Over here, I remember 2 years ago, I saw this form, and that form and this form like go really well together, and
Yeah.
let me bring them back together. Like that happens all the time when you have tools like this. And so to me, it's going to be, it will be, I mean, it's almost like a kid in a candy shop. Like it's like, oh my, now I can just go wild with this stuff. It's going to be almost an exercise in holding back, you know?
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. It's funny. I was trying to explain the blend function to
Hmm.
someone the other day, and I was going back through Midjourney's like announcement
Oh
channel
yeah, yeah,
on their
yeah,
Discord. I didn't even realize that function, to me it seems like an inherent like core component of Midjourney. And I
yeah,
didn't realize that announcement was only like 6 months old. It's only been like a 6 month old
yeah,
tool or something. And so it's
yeah,
just like, oh
yeah,
my goodness, like I can't even imagine the next year.
yeah,
Um, well, hey, Hector, listen, I
yeah,
want to be really respectful of your time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
could talk about this for 3 more
No, yeah,
hours,
yeah,
like
yeah. It's
no
great.
problem.
Yeah,
I would love to like have you back on sometime, or
yeah,
maybe we can do some sort of follow up in the next 6 months and
yeah,
see
yeah.
see where everything is.
Be like
Um,
cyborgs in 6 months.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
We'll do
well,
it. We'll just program two chat GPT versions of ourselves, and we'll
yes,
let
that's
them
what we do. Just
hash it
talk
out.
about
Yeah.
custom GPTs having a conversation.
Just to kind of wrap up and give you the floor here, how can people get in touch with you? I know you're offering classes online. Maybe do you just want to take 5 minutes and kind of plug what you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
going
yeah.
on?
What I do. Yep. Yeah. So I, like I mentioned, as I went down this path, I started. People asked me to if I could teach them what I was doing. So then I started building classes, and then one thing led to another, and I started this company, AIxCreative. And so that is my education platform. But basically, AI, it's actually shifting. It started out as an AI education training platform, right? I was teaching people how to do Midjourney for design, and then touching on some other tools as well. And so that folks can go. It's Dayda Studio. That's how organic this has happened, by the way. That my AIxCreative business is actually under my former design business, Dayda Studio, Dayda Studio. And so I'll get that, eventually updated. But so there you can see all the classes. I for the whole most of last year I did live classes. I was one-on-one or one-on-many, right, with organizations. And then in November-ish, right, I think Thanksgiving era-ish, I launched on-demand modules. So now if you just don't have the time, because I was getting a lot of people from overseas, and so if you can't do live, you can just get those and then just watch them at your leisure. And so that's what I offer for training, right? There's just different programs, some focus on. So that design for Midjourney is just a pretty an overarching from it gets you from beginner to pretty dangerous, with Midjourney and for design. And then it applies to not just product design, it's like product, graphic, any sort of design. And then I have a rapid visualization course as well, as a smaller one, and that's just really focused on this low fidelity world that I've been really, really on lately. And I think that's kind of where it's going actually with design. So that one to me is really good. And so that's the core of what I've been doing. But lately, as of sort of the end of the year and into now, pretty soon I'm going to be launching this AIX creative advisory service because I'm actually already doing it. What effectively happened is some of my clients and or new people started contacting me and saying, "Hey, I want to learn AI for my company, but what about is Midjourney the tool, or is there other tools, and what should I do?" So effectively, it's the step before training. So now it's saying, "Hey, I go in there, and then I have a little team, and so I go in there when
Nice.
we audit this organ. So it's usually organizations in this case, right? And they have a design team, and so whether it's an in-house team or a design firm, and so we audit what their current workflow, their current tools, their team, just how do you utilize design today, right, in your organization, and then we do these AI sprints, AI design sprints with different projects that real projects that they work on, so usually 3 to 5 depending on the company, and the idea is to get a really good sense of like a wide range of what the type of projects they work on to get a good sense of are these AI tools like stress test the tools basically. Are
Right.
these AI tools good for your type of work and your workflow? And out of all that then comes an output, and the output is to say, here's your current workflow and team and all the things you do, and then here it is enhanced by AI, and this is here you can use this tool, here you can use this tool, here you can benefit from this one, and even looking at it short term and long term, and then this is where it'd be great if there was a tool, but it doesn't exist today, but we'll keep an eye on it, and I'm pretty sure it may be coming, right? So it's
That's
almost like
awesome.
a playbook of sorts.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then at the end of it, like the final part ends, and then of course, because I have training modules, and then we can offer training on those tools. So the idea is to expand the training from not just Midjourney and chat and things like that, but to eventually Stable Diffusion and all these other tools that the ones that we sort of sign off on. So that's been
Awesome.
sort of the latest. That'll launch next month, hopefully, if there's time. And
Yeah, yeah.
and but that's where I'm really excited about because that really helps to, I think, make more of this impact that I'm looking to do with this.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm really
Yeah,
excited for you. That sounds like fun, like a really exciting new chapter. And
yeah, it's fun. Yeah,
yeah, if people are interested, follow Hector, Dayda.studio, Dayda dot studio. And yeah, thanks again, man. Hey, I
no,
really
thank you,
appreciate
Ray.
your
Yeah,
time. And yeah, wish you all the best.
thank you, Ray.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.